The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. In the midst of war-torn England, where the skies were often filled with the ominous drone of German bombers, four siblings found themselves whisked away from London to the safety of the countryside. Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy Pevensey arrived at the grand old house of Professor Kirk, a peculiar but kind-hearted man with a twinkle in his eye that hinted at secrets untold. The house itself was a maze of corridors filled with dusty, antiques and curious artifacts. On a rainy day, when outdoor adventures were impossible, the children decided to explore the vast expanse of their temporary home. As they wandered through room after room, Lucy, the youngest, found herself drawn to a spare room at the end of a long hallway. The room was empty save for a large, ornate wardrobe, standing solemnly against the far wall. Intrigued, Lucy approached the wardrobe. Its wooden doors were intricately carved with scenes of forests and strange creatures. As she opened it, the scent of mothballs and old fur coats wafted out. On a whim, she stepped inside, pushing past the heavy coats, her small hands brushing against the soft fur. But as she ventured deeper, something extraordinary happened. The fur coats gave way to pine branches, their needles prickling her skin. The mothball smell was replaced by the crisp scent of winter air. And then, incredibly, Lucy found herself stepping out into a snowy forest glade. A solitary lamppost glowing softly in the center. Lucy's heart raced with excitement and a touch of fear. She had stumbled into a whole new world, hidden away inside a wardrobe. As she stood there, marveling at the impossible landscape before her, a most unusual figure appeared from between the trees. It was a faun, half man and half goat, carrying an armful of parcels and an umbrella. He introduced himself as Mr. Tumnus and, after overcoming his initial shock at meeting a human child, invited Lucy to tea. His cave home was cozy and warm, a welcome respite from the perpetual winter outside. As they sipped tea and ate toast with sardines, Mr. Tumnus told Lucy about Narnia, this magical land she had discovered, and how it had fallen under the spell of the White Witch, who had cursed the land with endless winter but never Christmas. When Lucy finally returned through the wardrobe, she was bursting with excitement to tell her siblings about her adventure. But to her dismay, she found that no time had passed in our world. Her brothers and sister didn't believe her tale, dismissing it as a game or a dream. It wasn't until later, when Edmund followed Lucy into the wardrobe out of curiosity, that the truth of Narnia began to unfold for the others. But Edmund's experience was vastly different from Lucy's. In the snowy woods, he encountered the White Witch herself, beautiful and terrible in her sleigh pulled by white reindeer. She enticed Edmund with magical Turkish delight and promises of power, turning him against his siblings with honeyed words and false kindness. When all four children finally entered Narnia together, they found themselves embroiled in a prophecy and a war. The great lion Aslan, true king of Narnia, was on the move, and the witch's power was weakening. The Pevenseys learned that they were destined to become kings and queens of Narnia. But first, they had to overcome the White Witch and her army. Their journey through Narnia was filled with wonders and dangers. They met talking animals and mythical creatures, from the cheerful beavers who became their guides to the majestic centaurs who pledged their allegiance. They traveled across frozen rivers and through dense forests, always one step ahead of the witches' secret police. As they made their way to Aslan's camp, the landscape began to change. The eternal winter started to melt, with patches of green grass peeking through the snow and buds appearing on the trees. The air was filled with the sound of running water, as streams and rivers broke free from their icy prisons. It was as if Narnia itself was awakening from a long slumber. Aslan's camp was a place of wonder and preparation. Colorful pavilions dotted a lush meadow, and the air was filled with the sound of hammering. As weapons were forged and armor was prepared, creatures of all kinds moved about with purpose, talking animals, centaurs, fauns, and even trees that walked and talked. The children's first encounter with Aslan was awe-inspiring. The great lion was more majestic than they could have imagined, his golden mane shimmering in the sunlight, his eyes deep with wisdom and power. His very presence filled them with a mixture of fear and love, respect and adoration. But even as hope blossomed in the hearts of the Narnians, a shadow fell over the camp. The White Witch came to claim Edmund's life. Citing the deep magic that demanded the blood of traitors. To save Edmund, Aslan made a secret deal with the witch, offering his own life in exchange for the boys. That night, as Lucy and Susan watched in hidden horror, Aslan allowed himself to be bound, humiliated, and killed on the stone table. The scene was heart-wrenching. The noble lion, shorn of his mane, surrounded by the witch's horrible creatures, jeering and mocking. The witch's triumphant face as she plunged her stone knife into Aslan was a sight that would haunt the girls for years to come. But with the dawn came a miracle. As the first rays of the sun touched the stone table, it cracked with a sound like thunder. Aslan stood before them, alive and more powerful than ever, resurrected by a deeper magic from before the dawn of time. The witch's triumph had been short-lived, and now the tide of the war was about to turn. The final battle was a clash of good and evil, light against darkness. Peter, leading the Narnian army, found himself face to face with the White Witch. The battlefield was chaos, centaurs charging, griffins swooping from the sky. Dwarfs and fauns locked in combat with the witch's creatures. The clash of steel on steel filled the air, punctuated by roars, screams, and the twang of bowstrings. Just as all seemed lost, with Peter's forces overwhelmed and the witch turning her enemies to stone with her wand, Aslan appeared with reinforcements. The sight of the great lion bounding across the battlefield, his roar shaking the very ground, filled the Narnians with renewed strength, and the witch's army with terror. In the end, it was Aslan himself who defeated the White Witch, ending her cruel reign once and for all. As her wand shattered and her power broke, it was as if a dark cloud lifted from Narnia. The sun shone brighter, the colors seemed more vivid, and joy filled the hearts of all the good creatures of the land. With peace restored to Narnia, the 4 Pevensie children were crowned kings and queens. At the majestic castle of Cair Paravel by the sea, the coronation was a grand affair, with creatures from all over Narnia gathering to celebrate. The great hall of Cair Paravel gleamed with gold and marble, and the new monarchs sat on 4 thrones, each crowned with circlets of gold and silver. Years passed in Narnia, though no time at all went by in our world. The Pevensies grew into wise and beloved rulers, overseeing a golden age of peace and prosperity. Peter became a tall and noble high king, his wisdom and courage legendary throughout the land. Susan grew into a gentle queen of unparalleled beauty, her kindness as renowned as her skill with a bow. Edmund, once the traitor, became known as Edmund the Just, his fair judgment sought after by all, and Lucy the Valiant retained her childlike wonder and faith. Beloved by all Narnians for her joy and compassion, they had many adventures during their reign, hunting the white stag through the western woods, entertaining ambassadors from distant lands, and sailing to explore the islands of the eastern sea. Narnia flourished under their rule, with new towns springing up, trade flourishing, and peace reigning throughout the land. But one day, while hunting a mystical white stag, they stumbled upon the lamppost in the woods, the very same one Lucy had seen on her first visit to Narnia. Curiosity led them further, and suddenly they found themselves tumbling out of the wardrobe, children, once more, only moments after they had first entered. As they stood in the spare room, surrounded by mothballs and old coats, it was as if Narnia had been a dream. But the memories were too vivid, the experiences too real to dismiss. They had lived entire lives, grown up, ruled a kingdom, and now found themselves back in their child bodies, in a world where no time had passed at all. When they told Professor Kirk about their adventure, they were surprised to find him not only believing them, but seeming to know more about Narnia than he let on. His eyes twinkled with a secret knowledge, as he explained that they would likely return to Narnia one day, though not through the wardrobe. Once a king or queen of Narnia, he said, always a king or queen of Narnia. The children left the professor's house changed. They had experienced wonders beyond imagination, learned valuable lessons about courage, faith, and leadership, and carried within them the wisdom of years lived in another world. Though they were once again children in England, a part of them would always belong to Narnia. As they boarded the train back to London, their hearts were full of bittersweet memories. The war in their world was still raging, but they faced it with new strength and perspective. They had seen a greater battle, fought for higher stakes, and emerged victorious. Whatever challenges awaited them in their own world, they would face them with the courage and wisdom gained in Narnia. The story of the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is more than just a fantastical adventure. It's a tale of growth and redemption, of faith and courage in the face of overwhelming odds.